Welcome to the Joyful Money Podcast. This is the place for ambitious leaders, experts, authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs who want to make a huge impact and build a life of wealth and abundance without the stress and overwhelm. I'm your host, Joy Rowland, certified money and business coach and creator of the Joyful Money program. Each week, we'll explore proven strategies to amplify your voice, build a memorable brand, and attract high-ticket clients without the hustle. From landing podcast guest interviews to hosting high-converting VIP workshops, you'll learn how to turn your story into consistent income and use your voice to attract people to you. So if you're ready to stop chasing clients and start having them come to you instead, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this exciting episode of the Joyful Money Podcast. I am super happy and excited, like I always say, but today is super, super exciting because I'm bringing out the big guns today. The big guns I'm bringing out is my special friend. Her name is Yvonne Nobles. Welcome to the show, Yvonne.
Hello, it's such an honor to be here, Joy. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. So, why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us what you do?
Oh, thank you. So, I am a mindset coach, a success strategist. I wear a lot of different hats, but my focus of late is making sure I pour into powerhouses. And what I mean by that is we're pulled in a million different directions. Most of the people behind closed doors are confiding. They're tired, they're anxious, they're overwhelmed, but it's not something they can show in public. And they're wondering what to do with all this pent-up emotion. And so we take that and we turn it into fuel so they can actually create and protect their energy, their mental health, and become bigger and better at what they do.
Wow. There's a lot inside what you just said, so we're going to unpack all of those. Um, One of the things I want us to talk about is something I mentioned to my audience last week. I kind of bragged to them, so to speak, and I wanted you to touch on that. So you have helped me to expand my own vision of what's possible. So
Beautiful.
as a background, if you don't know, if you're listening, so I connected with Yvonne on Facebook. We did some collaboration for my 40th birthday, and then we started conversing. And as we're conversing and coming up with ideas on what to collaborate with on next, you told me about a Facebook group where someone had purchased coaching for 555,000 US dollars. And that blew my
Hmm.
mind. You sent me
Yeah.
the link. I went into the Facebook group. I found the lady who paid this huge amount. And it turns out she is in Ontario where I live. So,
Awesome.
yes. So like that message you sent me just blew my mind away. And it opened up my own money block as far what I was kind of thinking my limit could be in my coaching business. So I
Mm.
know that Grant Cardone, for example, I think his coaching program is like 2.5 million for one-on-one coaching. Right. So
Yep.
I know people charge huge amounts of money, but having a lady that I could really relate to paying 555,000 US dollars. That's
Yeah.
over $500,000 for coaching.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. So I told my audience that I'm going to bring you on and I wanted you to speak to that. Like, how do you help women to expand their vision of what's possible?
Oh, absolutely. Such an honor and a joy. This is what lights me up because, ever since I was a little girl, my thought for myself was if I am not scared of the dream, I'm not dreaming big enough. If it
Mm,
comes easy, if it seems doable, I can do it in my sleep, then I'm not dreaming big enough. And so I would challenge myself to always, as they say, shoot for the moon, because that's when you fall among the stars. So to reference that particular example that you gave, what I thought was so amazing about her investment was that was for 1 year of coaching. And when I first stepped into the coaching space, I hadn't really invested more than, let's say, 10,000 for a year of support. And so I started thinking, my 10,000 versus 500,000, God, there's such a disparity there. But then I dug deeper because I started looking at the point of relativity. And this is going to make a lot of sense to your audience in just a minute. I thought about at the time that I invested the 10,000, I was
Mm,
working a corporate job where I was making six figures. So
mm,
I took the investment and I broke it down to time. And I said, that means I was pulling in enough where it would take me 25 days of work to afford my investment, right?
yeah.
Not too bad, but I wanted to return to the $500,000 investment and see what that cost in time. Well, another one of her posts explains that she had her largest payout day after she made that investment. That payout was north of 400,000 in one day. So that told me relatively it took her a day and a half of work to afford her
Mm,
investment. So then, bigger picture. Oh my gosh, 25 days of my life working for a much lesser investment. It took her a day and a half. But how did she do it? It all starts with belief. And the
mm,
challenge with new beliefs is usually we do not want them. We resist, we fight, we kick and scream like a toddler who throws a tantrum. But when you can break through that, when you get yourself a mentor, a coach, a business partner, someone who's going to hold you accountable and hold your hand through the storm of doubt, what happens on the other side is amazing. So
mm.
if anyone else can do it, why not you?
Yeah.
Why is there something that says that's impossible for me? The only thing that separates you from the person who's done it is belief.
Wow. Wow. So how can we build that belief? And before you answer that, I just wanted to also point out that this lady who invested over $500,000 in coaching, she paid it in full. And in that post, she said that it didn't even make a dent in her finances. Like, that is mind blowing, right? So, to go back to my question, so this is the money block I am currently working on because I believe money blocks are at different levels, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I am so glad that you exposed me to that lady. And now I am working on my own money blocks to see
Mm.
that it's definitely possible for me to get to that level. Not because I'm hungry for money just because, but because I want to. I feel it to be fun to have that kind of wealth and that kind of abundance. So to go back to my question, how do we build belief?
So we'll use her as an example. She admits that when she first encountered the coach in whom she invested, she was nowhere near that level of belief. So it's in doing the work. And, I
Mm,
jokingly say the first time that Schwarzenegger walked into a gym and picked up a weight, he didn't look like what we see in the movies. When you
mm,
start any type of program, whether it's physical restructure or mental and emotional restructure, you're going to start at a point of weakness and you have
mm,
to build up. The problem is belief is one of those things you can't see it. It's
mm,
intangible. You can't smell it, you can't touch it. And so you could be doing big things, but you're still doubting yourself and you're questioning if was it luck? Is it a fluke? Am I going to keep this? So that's why to me, when you're restructuring the foundation of your life, you need to start with belief. You need to make sure that that structure isn't going to waver and crash when times get shaky. I'm glad too that you mentioned she's in Ontario like you, because another solid point on that is 500,000 US dollars for you is very different from someone in the US. That investment is even more because you're having to convert your currency. But here's the thing, in that lies a lesson.
mm,
Currency, energy, flow.
mm,
That's
mm,
really what money's about. And, if I can make a quick segue, something I often share with those that I'm helping through money blocks is many times we were taught as children that money is bad.
mm.
We weren't, it was never said directly. No one comes and says to you, money's a bad thing, but there's subliminal messaging that comes. So if you were ever told, money doesn't grow on trees, or why do you want that thing? You could get this at a better deal. Or
mm,
people that look like you and me only make X amount of money on average.
mm.
Who the heck wants to be average?
Not
We're here
me.
to blow things up, right? And so the challenges that happen are not something that you can change overnight. The
Mm,
lack of belief is something that was instilled in us through, for lack of a better word, brainwashing. It's societal limitations, because the
mm,
smaller that others can keep you, the bigger they get to be without lifting a finger. So I am calling for a revolution. I'm inviting people to start thinking differently and to start questioning, if I just change the belief in myself, if I just start
mm,
questioning the lies that I was told and that I was spoon fed ever since I could add two plus two, what would
mm,
change? Where would my
mm,
life be a year from today if I decided to believe differently?
mm. And for me, the answer is to never have to worry about money anymore. Like that's my goal. I want money
Nice.
to be a non-entity in my life because
Yeah.
I believe that there is so much more joy and fulfillment in life outside of material things.
Yeah.
And so that's my desire, and that's my desire for my audience as well, that you make as much money as you want to make so that your life is set up for life. You never have to worry about money anymore, and you have the freedom and the time to explore our beautiful life that God has blessed us with.
Love
So I
that.
love this so much. So tell us about your program, Yvonne, and tell us about, I know you also do luxury cruises. I want us to also talk about that here. But tell us about your program first.
So essentially, it's built on three principles. And whenever someone steps into my world of coaching, it's very tailored to the individual, because we've all had different walks in life. But those three tenets at the base of every program is warrior, wonder, wealth.
Mm,
Warrior, most people assume they're trying to figure out, what is my fight and why am I fighting? Those things are important, but bigger than that is, how do you stop feeling as if you have to fight? How do
mm,
you transition from this point of hustle and work
mm,
hard to being in a place of magnetism, where things
mm.
can come to you because you've reached peace? So it's
Yes.
almost like the biblical command to lay your weapons down.
Mm,
Stop fighting within yourself. Stop fighting even perceived enemies outside. When you reach that level of peace, things just flow. And
mm,
then when it comes to wonder, that goes back to the conversation we mentioned about, how big can things be for you?
mm,
So there is a theory that everything around you is a reflection of what you were willing to allow. So I want people to just dwell on that for a moment. What changes if you start allowing something more? How big can things grow if you just play with wonder? And,
mm,
again, when we were children, that's something that was really supported and advocated. There was time at school for imagination and role play. But somehow, as we get older, maturity says, nope, you got to be serious. No more dreaming. Everything has to be very, very by the book. But does it?
mm,
We get to decide. And the very
mm,
last component of wealth, our wealth is going to be limited by how much we dwell into those first two foundations. So, if you're looking at your bank account, you're wondering, why isn't it bigger? It's not
mm,
about what you're doing, it's what you're not being.
mm,
And what that means is you have to step into an identity. Even it's fun sometimes to come up with a name for yourself. And so you can be like, what would Susanna do if she was making this decision? Because then you can step outside of the pressure of that,
mm,
and you can start thinking strategically and emotionally from a place of strength. And those
mm.
decisions completely change everything. So it's all about connecting the dots. It's just taking people on a journey, first of inward discovery, and then so they can start seeing that reflect outside of them.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so looking at our situation from the lens of the future us that has actually achieved what we are looking to achieve. I love
There
that
you
so
go.
much. I love how you say name her. So I'm gonna choose a name for, I want to say Naomi. So I'm
Ah,
gonna call her Naomi. So that's gonna help me to detach from the weeds of myself and then seeing myself from Naomi's point of view. I know
love
it might
that.
sound a bit woo-woo for many people, but this is profound and this is what works. And I'm so glad we are talking about this today.
Love it, love it. And I love that you picked Naomi because that definitely breeds the element of loyalty and courage. And all those qualities lead to nothing but blessings and abundance. And if I may bring up, when you mentioned God earlier, I'm very spiritual. And one thing that I've learned in decades of Bible study, the Bible says that the love of money is the
Mm,
root of evil. And
mm,
unfortunately, that gets chopped up and mistranslated into how money is the root of evil. But I always share with people who are having trouble with that, who does all the money and the gold belong to anyway? If
God,
you're a true believer, it's his. So
yes.
he can control who it goes to. And wouldn't it make sense that he put it in the hands of people who are going to use it for good things? Now, that's
Mm,
not to say that oftentimes there is evil at play and people who do terrible things to get money and then do terrible things with that money. But that doesn't
mm,
have to be you. When you have good motive and good intent, then it only stands to reason that the person who owns the things will help you find them if you're open to receiving them. And that was one of my biggest struggles in going through this process is going full circle and understanding sometimes I don't have to be the giver. There is an
mm,
art to receiving.
mm. Wow. Just as you were talking about that scripture, I just remembered the section of the Bible that says, the cattle upon 1,000 hills belong to God. That's
Mhm.
such profound scripture. And also, I like to tell myself that as Christians, we have more, I want to say, impact and more ability to draw souls to Christ if we have money. I don't think
Mm.
God is proud when a Christian is struggling financially. I don't think so. I can't reconcile God being proud of his child suffering financially. So I believe that building wealth, being successful, makes God very proud. And so that's what I think, anyways.
Yeah,
So thank
solid
you for
point.
bringing that up.
And it's unfortunate because people can take a statement out of context. What tends to
Mm,
happen many times, even when I'm watching a podcast, I'll catch a note and then I run off and I'm doing life. And I remember that one thing, but I'm really going to invite all of the listeners to lean in to how there's layers to this. Because even Christ, when he was on earth, he didn't have a place to lay his head. So even though
mm,
he wasn't focused on securing riches, he never doubted that he would have what he needed. You don't see him on a struggle bus. You don't see him fretting for what to do for the next meal. In fact, there's a couple of occasions where he prayed and the provisions multiplied. So that element of realizing, even Solomon, he prayed for wisdom, but he was given riches to the extent that he was the richest man who ever walked the earth. So there's a lot to unpack in this. And I do strongly encourage people to take time, circle back, and weigh into what your old beliefs are that were instilled
mm.
in you and elevate those to a higher plane because it's going to make all the difference.
Wow. Oh gosh, I love this so much. Awesome. Okay, so tell us about your luxury cruises.
Ah, okay. Now I'm really going to light up.
Yes.
So, so I want to give you a little background first. I was in my late 30s, still didn't know what the heck a cruise was. But
Mm,
what introduced me to the world of it was a dear friend of mine who said, you should try selling cruises. I think you'd be awesome. And I said, I've never been on one. I don't understand them. I don't know what you mean. And she said, but you have such a way of talking to people. Why don't you come? I can set up an interview and you can decide. So I said, oh, okay. I drove from what is West Palm Beach to the port of Miami. And so anyone who's familiar with Florida layout, they know that takes an hour and a half on a good day. And lo and behold, I'm hired the same day I do the interview. So now I'm in a position where I have to go back and forth for that job, which was nuts because I hate mornings and I had to get up so early to be on time because the 1.5 hours turns sometimes into as much as 3 because of the traffic here in South Florida. But Joy, it was worth it
Mm.
because after 5 months, we actually relocated. And so I was closer to the job. But bigger than that, I learned so much just from listening to the training and others' experiences to the point that within a few months, I was able to surpass in sales people who'd been there for 15, 20 years. And, management asked, how did you do that? And I said, because all you got to do is listen.
Mm.
Sales is an art of just listening to what people want. And if you give them what they're asking for, the money's there. So that's a little tip for any salespeople in your audience. But yeah, it was glorious because after a year, my hubby and I finally had the opportunity to go on our first cruise. And I was scared because all I knew about cruising was Titanic, right?
Yeah.
And I don't swim. So I was like, I don't know, but we got to do this. So I know what I'm talking about. And even my husband was like, I ain't going. And I'm like, I had to beg and plead, please, let's go. And finally he goes, okay, fine. But before the week ended, he said, when are we doing this again? Because
Mm.
it is such an amazing way to go and discover the world. You've got majestic ocean, you've got service. And here's the real reason that I want to kidnap women and take them on this experience. Usually, your world revolves around you from the
Mm.
moment you wake up until you lay your head back on your pillow at night. You're serving others. So either you're there for your spouse, your partner, you're taking care of the children, you're running a business, you're being the very best you can in a job. It's a constant go, 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 and give, give, give. How
Mm.
different would that be if for a few days everything revolves around you and that you get to receive, receive, receive? It's such a different feeling. You're not even allowed to make your bed. Everything is done for you. So no cooking, no cleaning, no wondering, oh God, what am I doing for entertainment? What am I going to do? And then the other thing is when you look good, you feel
Mm.
good. And when you
Yeah.
feel good, great things come. So people are dressed to the nines. I mean, it's just glorious. So all that selling I did without having gone, it like went to a new level when I was able to actually go and see it for myself. Like, this is what everyone is talking about. So, on that note, I am actually going to be hosting a retreat. And the first one I'm doing this year is going to be at the end of April. So, it's 3 months from today, actually, April 28th. We kick off departing from Fort Lauderdale and it's going to
Mm.
be a 6 night adventure. Now, I know some people might be thinking, I've cruised before, or if I really want to do this, I can figure it out online. And you could. But what makes this a little different is I am also what I deem a travel concierge. So I merge my history of helping others with travel with the mindset coaching, which means all you have to do is give your name, confirm your documentation, and pack your bag. I take care of all the other little details that could go a little wonky if you're trying to do it on your own. But what that does is allows you to start your vacation before you even head out. And then
Mm.
when we're there, we're going to have retreat specific experiences. So we're going to have workshops around pouring into you and how do you love yourself more so you can show up better for the ones that you care about.
Mm.
This is such an odd concept to many women because again, we're the ones that give.
Yeah.
But when you're on an airplane, what do they tell you? Put on your oxygen mask first. Because if something happens to you, how are you going to care for the other people under your care? So this is an expansion on getting your life to a new level. And it's just one of those things you can't even imagine until you see it and you go through it.
Wow, wow, wow. I love this so much. So someone is listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to find out more. I want to find out more. What should they do?
Please send an email. My team can respond right away. It goes to tripsofbliss@gmail.com. And I know that Joy's going to note that in the write up. So that way you can go ahead and notify us because space is very limited. It is time sensitive, but we are doing this at such a low, beautiful point of entry because some people that have dreamed about this for years are thinking there's no way I can get there. But,
Mm.
even though this is something that is luxury, we're doing that to invite more people to an experience that will change their life. And I think that 2025 is the year we need to be a bit more proactive and looking for ways to help others thrive. One tenet I've learned in life, I grew up an Army brat. One thing I've learned after living in several states and many countries, the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
And I think that the state of the world is a reflection of how people have grown in selfishness. And it's
Mm.
really about me, me, me. But for a moment, if you turn outward and you start thinking as business owners, how can I give a little bit more to my community? How can I give others an opportunity to do something that they only dreamed about? Somehow things work out, some people say universe, I say God. He sends you so many blessings because you're coming from a different place, and I call that place love. So
Yeah.
I am loving the opportunity to give people a chance to come and be loved, to really get an escape, if you want to call it that, a reset, renewal, whatever the thing is that everyone secretly says, I need it. This is it. It doesn't get much better.
Yes, this is it. And just before we hit the record button, we were talking about numbers, and you told me how you and your company are making this as accessible for many people as possible. And I'm like, wow, that's such a low investment for all of the experience. So, are you happy to share the amount? Because someone might be listening and be like, oh my gosh, going on a cruise will like 20K, $20,000, right?
Yeah.
So, can you share the figures so that people know what this is?
Absolutely. And thanks for asking. In full transparency, there are going to be some on this same ship that have invested $20,000.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm getting that to a point of almost non-belief for $2,500. Not only are people getting an opportunity to come on this cruise, but they're going to get coaching support for a couple months prior and
Mm.
then for 2 weeks after, because the person that you become while you're away is going to be so much larger than life that I want to make sure that when you're back home, you can implement everything that you've learned. We're going to teach you how to package that and be able to go back into that toolkit and bring her out
Mm.
wherever and whenever you need. And, we're going to have some workshops that revolve around making your story magnetic. So for some
Mm.
people, they're going to be writing the shell of their book. So imagine a best-selling book that when you present it, there's standing ovations because people were waiting to hear your story. And others are going to do it in the form of a speech. So they're going to be bravely getting on stages after this cruise. Whatever your dream is, we're going to help you come up with a concise way to build towards that. And again, I'm speaking from experience. I wrote a book in 7 days while at sea. Would I have been able to do that back on land? I'm not so sure because with my daily commitments, there's a lot of distraction. But imagine for a moment, you're distraction free. You are feeling at the peak of your existence. I'm
Mm.
telling you, you can do anything. And,
Yeah.
this doesn't even start getting into the foodie aspect and the fun and all the other stuff that comes with it. It's just a phenomenal experience.
Wow. Like you've just taken me to heaven, to be honest. Like just listening to the description of the cruise. And one other thing you mentioned before we hit the record button is that this particular cruise, the ship is just 2 years old. So it's like
I'm so
brand
glad you're
spanking
remembering the
new.
details. Yeah, she's a baby. So I'm kind of bougie when it comes to picking the ships involved because they have personalities of their own. And this
Yeah.
particular class of ship, my hubby and I have gone on two of her sisters, and they were mind blowing. So when I'm telling your audience, this is creme de la creme. And to put it in context, moving forward, I won't offer this at this price point again. I'm just inviting people who are in the position time-wise and also emotional because, investments involve emotions, but the ones that are seeking adventure and they want to basically put themselves in a place that is so far beyond where they are at this moment. I'm like, this is the best way to do it. Because in essence, what happens is for any who's never been on a cruise, let me paint a quick picture here. Um, this is a large floating city, right? So you're going to approach, and in front of you is a vessel that is 17 decks or stories high. And each of these decks has a unique feel because some places are about the restaurants and decor, others are about the activities. So if you love Broadway, Vegas style shows, that's going on every day. There's, different elements of learning. So there's dance lessons, there's games to play, there's history. If you love art, there's areas of the museum that are like the ship that are art museums. They have like art that you can purchase and it will be delivered at your home when you go back. Anything that you can imagine that you've done on a vacation, it's here. And bigger than the energy of being in a new place and getting new scenery every day is that you're going to be able to meet people that are like you, that are on the same trajectory towards something huge. So when you take how you feel when you're at peak and you know how wonderful that is, imagine multiplying that by 10, 20, and thousands because everyone is elevated.
Yeah.
It's just it's so awesome.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So, listeners, please take advantage of this. I feel like, especially where the world is right now with the stress levels, I feel like this is like a godsend. And so, I encourage people to take advantage and just prioritize your mental health and just take time out. And I promise you, your family wouldn't fall apart. And when you come back so refreshed and you'll be able to give a lot more love, support, and care to your family.
I love that. And briefly, if someone has the question, because there are some in my audience who think I could never go without my family, that's okay. Bring them too. We have an arrangement whereby you can do that. And there's a lot of activities that they can do while we're doing our work together. So whether you're coming solo for that escape reset or you're bringing the family, this is something that's going to benefit you in ways that you can only imagine.
Hmm, awesome. I love this so much. So I know we're at time, but before we go, I want to ask you this question. What inspires you? Like, what's driving you to be this amazing, fulfilled, successful woman that you are?
There's so many different things, but one
Mm,
thing is the memory of my father.
mm,
I lost him. It's been going on 12 years now.
mm,
But sometimes it feels like yesterday. And one
mm,
thing that he always embodied was laughter, wit, joy. Um, it's amazing what you see once the well is dry. So
mm,
I hold on to that memory as motivation and inspiration that anything is possible,
mm,
that anything can be done if you're willing to go for it. And there are a lot of things in life that are going to pop up. And from my experience, that will try to challenge you and
mm,
talk you out of it. But one thing that I learned from my dad was to use those challenges as even more motivation, see them as stepping stones. So when someone
mm,
tells me I can't or I won't, then I just get to work figuring out how to disprove it. And it's worked. Sometimes that might be the message I need to hear. You can't do that. You won't succeed at that because it becomes the thing that maybe I never even considered. And I
mm,
am so convinced that if I've, been in positions to see myself move from here to there and then look back over my shoulder like, wait, how did that happen? That, if I've done it for me and I've helped
mm,
children back in my tutoring days, and I've seen grown people who don't believe in themselves become their own advocates and ambassadors, then I
mm.
know that, this is worth doing. This work is what gets me sleep at night. because I
Mm.
feel it's a calling to make sure that others wake up to their calling.
Wow. Wow. So profound. Okay. So I'm going to give you space to have the last word. What words of encouragement and inspiration do you have for my listeners?
I'm going to close with what I'm using as my new call tag, which is you are loved,
Mm.
you are needed. Let's make a difference together.
Wow. Wow. Such an exciting episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a joy and privilege talking to you, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed on this earth.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you have enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review. Share this episode with a friend to spread the message of hope, abundance, and possibility. And if you're ready to take the next step to amplify your voice, attract premium clients, and create consistent income, head on over to my website, www.joyroland.com, to learn more about my Joyful Money program or grab one of my free resources. Remember, making money can be joyful, and your story is powerful. Until next time, keep showing up, sharing your voice, and building the business of your dreams. Your voice is your power. Sending you lots of love, joy, peace, and light. Bye for now.